be in right now than in this room with you people, because
the most powerful creative minds in the world are here at this conference.
I would say the best ideas don't have to come from the top.
The size of an idea is more important than the size of the budget, and it can come from anywhere.
When you make content that people really want to watch, they will share it.
The audience is always the king.
We need the best of us to unite against the worst of us.
The good thing about culture is we have the power to change it, and it's really this industry that can lead.
Don't let anybody ever tell you never. Get in there, shake it up, and break all the rules.
But always remember, keep the magic alive.
I am what I am. And that's a pretty good message, I think.
So, good morning, all. My name is Jose Papa. I'm Managing Director of Cannes Lions. I would like to thank you all. We couldn't be more excited with the 2018 edition. Lots of changes, lots of exciting things happening. It's really hard to get on stage in Cannes Lions. For those that have been there, you know how much we cherish the emblematic Cannes Lions stage. And this year, we have a record number of submissions. Actually, for those that don't know, we have more than 1,300 submissions, which is a lot, and all very exciting. So for us to distill down and to really make the right choices, it is quite difficult and challenging. That's why this is such a unique place. And we have 15 stages available, so it's a mesmerizing, life-changing experience. Yourself to really get into the Cannes Lions content is transformative. It changes lives, it changes organizations, it changes career paths. So we saw that this is actually a record-breaking number from last year, and probably a record-breaking number in all our editions, so it's quite unique. But why could this be? And we think because in 2018, our industry has more to talk than ever before. Ever before. More complexity, more difficult decisions, more new players, more demanding consumers. We are grateful and honored to be swamped with ideas for our stages that come from across the globe. Literally, each and every corner of the globe suggests the groundbreaking ideas that will define not just the today, but many years to come. So it's quite a unique place. Artists, designers, movie makers, writers, thinkers, agency legends, digital natives, creative marketers, musicians, many others will speak during the 5 packed days. But they all have one thing in common, something everyone who comes to Cannes Lions believes passionately too. They all believe that creativity drives businesses and is a force for change and for good. This is our motto. We believe that creativity is a force for change and for good. The message this year, as you will see, is very clear. Cannes Lions is a stage to connect. It is a stage to collide, a stage to create, a stage to trade, a stage to inspire, a stage to grow, and a stage to share. Cannes Lions is a place where creativity meets business, where we see creativity driving performance, where return on investment is clear for those that boldly embrace creativity. And you will see examples right now today in the debate we're going to have now. It is where culture meets communication, where traditional ideas meet cutting-edge tech to create magic, where most of all it's a place to find ideas for anyone who gets serious about driving growth. We know from many research studies that creativity drives business success. We've been in this journey to prove the correlation these many years of outstanding creativity driving business performance. But it's one thing knowing that. It's another thing understanding how to execute great creativity. And that's the uniqueness and the unique perspective you get during those magical days in Cannes. That's why the Cannes Lions content program is there to inspire, guide, to teach, to open eyes, raise smiles, and drive our future, and drive the next many years to come. And actually, it is to make us all fall in love with this industry all over again. A stage to inspire. And I would like now a warm welcome to the magician behind the extraordinary stage that Cannes Lions is, Charlotte Williams, our content director.
Hello everyone, glad this is switched on. So I'm going to moderate a panel this morning with three of our wonderful speakers who are taking to the stage this year. I'm going to introduce them all. So we've got Sarah Hofstetter, if you wouldn't mind taking a seat. Sarah is CEO of 360i, which is in Ad Age's enviable A-list. I believe it's number 8 this year. And it also won Ad Age's Media Breakthrough Agency of the Year. So welcome, Sarah. I'm now going to introduce Katie Alonso. Katie is Group Strategy Director at Droga 5. Droga 5 are obviously one of the most creatively awarded agencies on the planet. And Katie works with some of the world's most iconic brands, including CoverGirl, which she is bringing to the stage this year at Cannes. So welcome, Katie. And finally, I'm going to welcome Fernando Machado. I hope I pronounced that right. Fernando is Global Chief Marketing Officer at Burger King. He won our very highly coveted Creative Marketer of the Year last year at Cannes. He is also jury president this year on the Creative Effectiveness Jury. So welcome. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to start with a few questions, and this will be about 25, 30 minutes long, so we'll keep it quick. But I wanted to ask you all, Cannes Lions sets the agenda for the next 12 months. We set the creative agenda. From all of you, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing branded communications in the adjacent industries at the moment? Sarah, you go.
I'll start. I think probably the biggest challenge is that the rules have changed because the competition has changed. You know, when we think about a lot of our clients today and the brands that many of us represent, they're usually in, you know, the top, the biggest brands, the brands that can frankly afford to do this kind of work, except the competition is completely different than it was in the past. You're dealing with the long tail, completely coming up with different ways of competing, whether it's a digitally first approach or just completely bypassing the retail experience and selling online. And so because of that, it's harder for quote unquote traditional marketers to get this competitive edge in the marketplace. You know, you think you're at the top because you've got the best relationship with the Walmarts of the world, or you've got the best brick and mortar locations. But in fact, all the things that were your assets and your competitive advantages might be your biggest vulnerabilities, which is why creativity is that much more important to drive actual business outcomes.
Great. Katie.
So I think 3 months ago I probably would have said something like audience fragmentation is one of the larger challenges, but as I kind of look toward the future and I look at a lot of things that are happening in culture right now, and especially as you look at North America with the government, I do see a lot of uncertainty in the future just in terms of what the inventory is going to look like from a media perspective, just in terms of what the regulation is going to look like in the space and people's personal data. Because I think if you pay a lot of attention to the news, especially the FCC and the FTC, it's a very bipartisan issue in terms of how these things are going to be regulated in the future because of the election. And so for me, I do see a lot of uncertainty in the future just in terms of what we are going to make. But I do also see it as an opportunity, to your point about the creative industries, how do we take advantage of that challenge?
For me, the biggest challenge when I think about Burger King is how the hell we're going to come up with the next blockbuster idea. I mean, we really try to, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but like try to keep raising the bar again and again. And we always leave Cannes thinking it will never be as good as this year. And then we have another year that's good. But it's really tough, you know, like to keep like raising the bar creatively. And in terms of the industry, I think that one of the big topics that has been gaining importance, rightly so, has to do with diversity, especially when it comes to gender equality and gender balance in our industry. And I'm very happy to say that I'm the only dude in the panel, right?
It's
and
good,
that's
isn't it?
great.
Makes
You
you
know,
check.
like, yeah. So to me, like, how can we know that diversity and different opinions and different perspectives, they get to better creative. At least I and us at BK, we firmly believe on that. So how can we continue to push so that it becomes more of like a mixed gender in our work environment, in the agencies, in the client side, and everything.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know diversity for us is absolutely one of the biggest themes that we see submitted. But it's interesting that it seems to, last year it was very much around gender, and this year we're seeing much more around LGBTQ and other types of diversity that perhaps haven't been as widely addressed before. So thank you all. And moving on from that, but corollary to that is what you're bringing to the stage this year, because I'm guessing all your ideas are born out of what you think is going to be really important in the next 12 months. So starting, Fernando, why don't you go first? What are you bringing to the stage? I know you're talking on the communications track at Cannes, but what's your big idea this year and why is it so important?
Yeah, I'm really excited with the stuff that we're preparing for this year. BK partnering with David, which is one of our key agencies globally, and I will be on stage with Hik and Juan, who are like one of the brightest like teams of the agency. I would say globally, you know, they were able to come up with Google Home of the Whopper, with Man Boobs, which was a Grand Prix, I think, in For Good, like a couple of years ago. And the big team that we're going to talk about, I mean, we are calling the presentation The Rise of Hackvertising. So it's basically like how we work to predict as best as we can what the next big thing will be, and how we insert the brand into the conversation in a way that's relevant to the topic and relevant for the brand. And I think that Burger King specifically has had a history of doing that, from Crispin with Whopper Sacrifice to Google Home of the Whopper, which was done more recently. So we want to share a little bit of like how we come up with that type of stuff, and what's our mental thinking, how is the process to get to that, which we think can benefit everyone, because it's just kind of like a different way to go about it.
So it's how to hack the big idea, almost.
How to hack the system with a big idea.
Excellent. Brilliant. And Katie, you're on the good track this year, which of course is about brand purpose and addressing wider sort of social, political issues as well. Can you tell us a bit about your topic at Cannes, your presentation?
Yeah, so I'll be on stage with my client, Ukonwa Ojo, the editor of Allure, and Issa Rae, who stars in her own HBO show. And what we're going to talk about is reframing femininity for a force for good in culture, which we did through the CoverGirl case study. So I think we'll talk a bit about the work, and not sure how familiar people are in the room about it, but a lot of what we did in that work was we fundamentally challenged the status quo, not just in the category of beauty, but in culture more broadly, and actually took the idea of femininity and beauty and thought about it as a positive versus thought about it as a negative. And so what we want to talk about are all the little nuances and a lot of the assumptions that we have in culture that a woman can't come to a stage and look beautiful and also be taken seriously, or the idea that, you know, makeup is just something that you know, women wear for men, and how we reframed a lot of these ideas and actually fundamentally took CoverGirl out of the male gaze and put it through a woman's perspective, and the positivity and the force for that, and also how effective it was in market as well.
Yeah, you spoke to me a bit about the effectiveness of the campaign. It's doing phenomenally well, right? So we know that good is effective.
Yeah, good is effective. I think one of the things that we actually see, you know, you see it in the comments, obviously in social media. You see women reply to it on Twitter and say, I wish I had something like this when I was 13. But also we're you know, the brand is rewarded for it in the market, just in terms of the sales and what that's done for the brand.
Excellent. Looking forward to that one. And Sarah?
So I'm not talking on a good panel. I'm just talking on impact.
You are talking on impact, yes.
Which I hope will be good as well. And I will be speaking alongside the Chief Marketing Officer of North America for Mondelez, which is the parent company of Oreo, Cadbury, Ritz, lots of big brands. So started out talking about how big brands are at risk from the long tail, and the purpose of talking about impact is specifically to say, how do you have a 100-plus-year-old brand like an Oreo and yet always kind of come up with something fresh to drive growth? When you're the #1 cookie with 98% awareness, how do you make sure that people are still not just thinking about your product, but buying your product with a lot of things that can come in the way of being able to do that and to do so effectively? So the name of the session is called Think Like a Toddler, because you have no inhibitions, and it helps you think about growth, which is actually the #1 objective for a toddler, is to grow. It's certainly not to be independent. So for our session, we're going to be talking about how do you drive impact by thinking like a toddler.
Excellent. And there's talk, I've read a lot about marketers being chief growth officers and the sort of movement towards that. Is it along those lines as well, sort of looking at the new role of the marketer?
Yeah, it is fascinating. I don't know if it's because there was so much crap in the press about how chief marketing officers were turning over so quickly and their jobs didn't last long, so we just had to change the title. We are marketers, right? So and we turn them into chief growth officers and everything's good in the world. No, but it speaks to the critical component of accountability, right? Ultimately, if you're a chief marketing officer, your job is to drive growth. So there are some organizations that have changed that title from CMO to CGO. And I think it's to drive that degree of accountability. I think CMOs are in a very phenomenal place in this world right now, because they're at this pivotal point where they can say, whether it's the stuff Katie's talking about around data or the stuff that Fernando's talking about in terms of innovation, you've got to be that driver. And so when you say, you know, I'm a marketer is a means, but the end is growth. So they're both important, but I think the movement to chief growth officer puts a lot more accountability in the C-suite on a marketer, which I think we've all been wanting. I certainly know my CMO clients have been wanting.
Would you agree, Fernando?
Yeah, I do, and that's why I think it's so important to have an effectiveness layer in Cannes, you know, to make sure that we prove to all skepticals around the world that don't believe as much that creativity can drive growth and can drive results. That actually there is a very strong link between the two things.
Excellent, thank you. So predictions, we've talked a bit about what you think are the really important challenges and issues for the next 12 months. Predictions of what will be on stage and in the work at Cannes this year. If last year was, I guess it's perhaps the year of AI, we saw a lot of that on stage and in the work, but what would you say we're going to see a lot of in 2018?
I mean, we already talked a bunch about diversity already, which I guess you can't go to an advertising discussion without it. Or maybe because I'm a woman, I hear a lot more of it. But I guess if you're a man, you probably hear a lot of it too. But I think social justice overall and social equality is going to be an issue. So you said there was, I'm confident, and I know from last year as well, you got a ton of submissions for speaking engagements around diversity, and everybody, regardless of their background, is excited to be able to talk about that. But how does that translate into the work? And being able, I mean, it's great to hear all the stuff you're doing with CoverGirl. When you think about what that means in the work itself, how many brands are brave enough to put that into the work itself and to change the paradigm as it relates to that? I think the other thing that's going to come up a lot more is not necessarily AI, but it's the new creativity, kind of like what Fernando was talking about. How do you come up with beautiful creative that is tech-enabled to drive, again, impact and business outcomes? So there was a time where so many of the award submissions were so driven about tech for tech's sake, and then there was the beautiful creative video, and you kind of had one but not the other. I'm hopeful, and certainly will be submitting, the combination of the two, that creativity, that beautiful, high-impact, effective creativity, balanced with some elements of technology that drive impact and help you get to the right people.
Excellent. I actually agree on that note. It's just taking, what I hope to see is a lot of very, very creative uses of data that are also, I think to your point, very, very effective. I hope to see a lot of diversity and inclusion. I think obviously just, for me being a woman and also just where the industry is going. I think also too, one of the things that I also really, really hope to see is to your point about social justice, but then also seeing it being rewarded in market. And so I do hope to see that there is a lot more of an emphasis this year in terms of work that was not just very attention-getting, but also work that was very effective at the same time.
Yeah, I think that my build is on this point. I think that what I'm hoping to see, and I've been seeing that increasingly year after year, is a very strong link between like the creative and the result. Not just like a stunt for a stunt's sake that everyone spoke about, but how that helped drive brand growth, sales, or attributes for the brand, or awareness, or whatever it is. Like a very strong link between the two things.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting, the talk around brands in a political sphere, or a increasingly polarized world that we live in. We have seen a lot of content being submitted around that. I think it will be a theme this year. It can. What is the role of brands in a world that is increasingly polarized and political? So that's interesting. And this is one for you, Fernando, mainly, because I know you're very much in the realm of creative effectiveness. You won the jury last year, you won Creative Marketer of the Year last year, and you're jury president, of course, of CREF this year. Cannes Creative Effectiveness Lion, what do you think the role, why is that so important, unique? What role does that lion have at a festival of creativity?
I think that, first of all, it's a very different award than other creative effectiveness awards out there. Because to start, you can only submit something that already got some recognition in Cannes before. So we'll be judging campaigns that were at minimum a short list in the past. So they already had some accolades in terms of like creative. So that's like sets the bar already very high in terms of creative. Sometimes you have effectiveness award shows which it was very effective, but I would argue it was similar to something that I've seen before, or maybe not as creative, you know what I mean? So, so that's the first thing. It's a different way to judge effectiveness because it already starts with the premise that everything that we are going to see is very creative. And second, I think it's critical, especially like being on the client side, to showcase to more clients that the best creative work tends to be brave, and that bravery pays off. The best creative work that wins gold, that wins the Grand Prix, which I think it was Airbnb, the Van Gogh exhibition last year. Man, the results are amazing. I would take those results in any brand that I have ever worked with any day. And all the golds were the same. Like it was a P&G with the laundry campaign, or Ariel campaign in India. It was Burger King with Mac Whopper. Those results are insane. So hopefully by showcasing the link between being brave, leading to better creative, leading to better results, we'll be able to continue to raise the bar in the industry by having more clients embracing creativity and taking the leap of faith sometimes on what the agency is presenting.
So bravery, bit of a...
Yeah, I think that was the key theme in our jury last year. You know, like that bravery favors the, like fortune favors the brave, right? I mean, I think that Jonathan even opened his speech on the day of the award ceremony by saying that, and we all that were judging there truly believe on that. I bet that all the agency people in the room believes on that. Sometimes I think that maybe the client believes on that, but doesn't walk the talk sometimes. So hopefully by rewarding campaigns that were brave and led to strong creative and strong results, we'll be able to help push a little bit so that clients can embrace that type of creativity.
Excellent, good answer, thank you. And Katie, do you have any thoughts on that? I know you've won Effies, haven't you? And CoverGirl's doing really well. What are your thoughts about Creative Effectiveness Award, a festival of creativity? What's unique about it?
Well, I think to your point too, it's the idea of bravery and bravery being rewarded. I think, you know, just the idea, you often, sometimes you get in meetings, it's like, well, but what about the really hard-working work? It's like, shouldn't all of it be very hard-working? Shouldn't all of it be very creative at the same time? So that, you know, very much this idea that, oh, if it's really, really creative, it won't be effective. And I just don't believe that. And so I think it's very encouraging, you know, to sit on stage, you know, with a client who says you have to walk the walk. And I think it's very, very important. And I think, you know, to your point too about do you have the courage to do it? I think, you know, one of the things about this business that I think a lot of people don't understand is the agencies are amazing, but actually it comes down to the clients and how brave the clients are to actually put this work in market and be rewarded for it. So I think, you know, to have a festival of creativity and then also have effectiveness be a part of it, I think it's incredibly important to what we do in this business.
Brilliant. And Sarah, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that, because your submissions always stand out as being really brave and fun and playful.
And high impact.
And high impact, very high impact.
I think one of the things for us is, you know, we can say we love all of our clients equally, but we always have our favorites, and some of those favorite ones are the ones that are excited about taking risk and whatnot. But no matter what, when you work at an agency, your clients aren't paying you to be creative. Your clients are paying you to sell product. And that's why I'm super excited about the disproportionate focus in this conversation about creative effectiveness. Ultimately, you want to do great work, but that work ultimately has to sell something. And if it doesn't sell something, you're not going to be the agency, or if you're the client, you will not be working there anymore. So for me, it's not just how important creative effectiveness is in general. I love the key ingredients of what even gets you to the submission. The fact that the work itself had to have happened in the past, and then it needs to actually be live for long enough to see the effectiveness. People get very excited about work, and especially in the echo chamber of advertising. We all talk about the same thing, and we think the rest of the world is talking about them, but they're not. They've moved on. So when you say, oh, because of this work, we've seen sales go up, and sales continue to go up, and that becomes a launch pad for something bigger for a brand, well, then you're talking about efficacy that has sustainable value. And so because of that, for me, that's the one I want to win.
Brilliant. Right, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. I think we're probably running out of time. Wanted to keep it quite quick. But one final question for you all. What is the best thing that you've ever learned at Cannes? What's the best thing you've learned, you've heard,
For me, so when I spoke on the main stage last year, my speech was about the importance of individuality and how to look at things a little bit differently. And so my speech was about looking at the things you think are your vulnerabilities and how to flip them and turn them into assets for yourself. And so I got up looking out at a crowd of hundreds of people that I didn't know, that came from different countries, that had different backgrounds, and completely bearing my soul about the things that are the weakest about me. And the encouragement that I got afterwards, not just on social media, but people coming over to me throughout the course of the week, was holy moly amazing and inspiring. And so I think the most important thing I've learned, I have gone to Cannes Lions for a few years, and they talk about this fearless agenda over and over and over again. And I didn't believe it until I got on the stage, was fearless, completely bared my soul, and was rewarded for having done so.
Was it life-changing?
Very little in this world is life-changing, but it did change. You know, it's interesting because I talked about a number of things. You know, not just like the obvious woman thing, but my religion and a lot of other things about me that would put me at a competitive disadvantage in my job, and how I changed the perception of that, and that has actually helped me and it's helped my clients. And so I wouldn't say it's necessarily life-changing, but in light of so much more cultural discourse about these things, I feel more comfortable. And so I think that combined with many other things has allowed for more people to feel more comfortable. So I don't know necessarily if it was life-changing, but it certainly was emboldening.
Fantastic, thank you.
So last year at Cannes, I saw Mark Pritchard and Sheryl Sandberg speak, talking about the Tide work and a lot of the work for Always. And for me, it was one of those panels that's like very much like a once-in-a-lifetime panel. I was so happy to be there. And Sheryl actually, she started the talk, and she was talking about how they had asked women to put on red lipstick and go in and ask for a raise. And the women said, "Oh, I can go in and ask for a raise, but I'm not going to put on the lipstick." And she was like, it was just this idea of, misogyny and women in the workplace and makeup. And I was like, oh, I love you, Sheryl. Because that was so much of what we were trying to change with the work at the time that was in development. It was amazing to hear her start off with that. But there's actually a clip of it here, and Mark Pritchard, who I absolutely adore, he talked about it, and he was talking about the Always work, and he said, by the way, when you do good by women, you do good for business. And for me, that always really stuck with me. And then the clip that was just played now, when Sheryl said, everyone in this room has the power to impact culture in a positive way. And I came away from that with the responsibility and the work that I do. So it was a really great moment for me.
Good, yeah, very powerful, that presentation. Fernando.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a big fan of the festival. So I love all the talks. I spend an outrageous amount of time looking at the short list downstairs, and then I have to take a walk on the beach because it's so overwhelmingly amazing, all the stuff. So I love the festival. I think that what has been the most important thing for me is kind of like the connections that I was able to build by being there. Most of the best work I was fortunate enough to be part of, they started with a conversation at the beach or at the Carlton, or, you know what I mean? Like, really, I met most of the agency people that I work with there, and the ones that I haven't met there, I met because I met someone there, So I think it's it's really important, and speaking from the client side, to go there so that you get to know people beyond the agencies. You know what I mean? And usually when I hire an agency or we work on a project, I'm actually hiring the people, not necessarily the agency. And that to me is kind of like life-changing in a way, because it was career-changing for me. Our professional life is such an important part of our life, so to some extent is life-changing.
So those kind of sort of off-stage experiences, the serendipitous meetings, the sort of getting to know people and informal.
People that you like, that you work with, they connect you with someone, and then you end up getting that someone a little bit better. You see the work that the person or the team of people did, and then you start dating, and at some point you guys do a job, and it works, and then it grows from there.
Great. Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I hope you all enjoyed that. All of these fabulous folks are going to be on stage at Cannes 2018, so make sure you come, make sure you see their sessions. I'll let you take your seats again. Thank you all very much. Turn your mics off. So just before we finish, I'm going to introduce one of our well, she's actually not speaking at Cannes, but Faith Popcorn's Brain Reserve are doing a session at Cannes, which is going to be really, really fascinating. I'm really excited about it, on the future of masculinity. Very important topic at the moment. So I'm going to introduce Tiana B. Holt to the stage. Tiana's got an incredible CV. I looked at it last night. She's worked with some amazing brands, Johnson & Johnson, Campbell's. She's also got an MBA from Harvard Business School. Pretty incredible. So she's going to talk for a couple of minutes, really, just give you a teaser of what's going to happen at Cannes this year. Thank you.
I'll just steal this. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you. Just listening to you guys talk about what's coming up, I wish it were June already. As we think about the future of masculinity, in this topic, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. As the mother of 2 young sons, I wonder, what is the future of masculinity and what on earth will I be teaching them? At Faith Popcorn's Brain Reserve, we really focus on one question. If I knew everything about tomorrow, what would I do differently today? Sounds like a really simple question, but the answer often isn't. That's why we're thrilled, excited, terrified to explore this topic. And what really brought this about for us as a company? We look at cultural shifts. We want to understand what's coming, what the rising tides are. And with everything that's happened, the barrage of harassment scandals from Hollywood, to the Capitol Hill, we really see that a cultural shift is in the midst. And this is going to have a profound impact on how men and women relate to one another. And in communications, we have a responsibility to portray what that shift is going to be and what it could be. It has just a huge impact as we think about advertising and all communication. So how are we going to do this? Our futurist-in-chief, Faith Popcorn, will host a panel. We have a professor, we have a queen, and we have an entrepreneur. The professor is Michael Kimmel. He's a professor of sociology and stars the founding director of the first of its kind study of men and masculinity. We all hear about women's studies. There is one in the world that is focused on men. We will hear from him. We'll also hear from Violet Chachki. Any RuPaul fans in the house? All right, so season 7 winner will be on the panel. They will talk about gender fluidity and the rejection of binary identification and what that means in terms of how we're portrayed and why some people are so uncomfortable. And it was this whole notion of, if I'm not really sure which box to put people in, I'm not sure how to sexualize them. So it'll be interesting hearing from them about that. And then finally, we have Amy Nelson, the CEO of Riveter. And she's founded an incubator, and she talks a lot about, for years I really tried to get a seat at the table, and I couldn't, so I decided to build one. We're looking forward to this, wonderful panel taking a provocative look at what does this mean for masculinity. So what are they going to talk about? They're going to explore what are the new archetypes of masculinity. What does this mean for men who are often being vilified for demonstrating masculine traits? How do they interact in the world, and what impact will this have on communications, evolving product, service, channel needs? How is that going to change technology? It's going to be a fascinating and riveting discussion. We'll be looking for a number of questions and challenges from you guys from the audience as well, because that's one thing we hear time and time again about CAN. It's about exploring the limits of our humanity and how we relate to one another. So we look forward to seeing you in June, and be sure to check out The Future of Masculinity and How It Will Impact Creativity.
This one. Thank you all very much for coming this morning. That's it from us. So please grab a cup of tea, coffee, croissant, whatever, and network and ask us any questions. There's a lot of CAN team here, so if you've got any questions about content or how to submit or what you've submitted, let me know. Thank you very much.